This is the Next Bite of Life podcast, the place to be to hear personal stories from expats, digital nomads, and everybody else taking their next bite of life. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Next Bite of Life podcast. My name is Kem. Today I have Linda King on the show, and she is a woman that wears so many hats. So I'm just going to let her say hello and tell us where she is right now.
Great. Yes. Thanks, Kem. Lovely to be with you. My name's Linda King. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm a travel writer, author and blogger. Really great to be talking to you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Linda. It's nice to have you. I know you're in Australia, so there's a big time difference, so I'll try and make it as easy for you as possible. Anyway, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, you were born and raised in Australia, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so, but you traveled quite a bit as a kid. Like, it's always been something that you've always done, right?
Yeah, so was really lucky. My parents both loved travel. And I think the really vivid memory that I've got as a kid was that we went on a 4-month road trip around Australia, which was an amazing trip. We saw most of Australia. And as kids, wow, we loved it because we were out of school for 4 months. So we absolutely loved that. What we didn't know was my father had already spoken to the teachers, and he gave us homework every night. So we didn't know that until we got on the trip. But it was an education, like it was a life education as a child. Like we learn a lot about, we'd only ever known where we came from, which was Sydney, but we saw so much of Australia. And I think that really opened my eyes to travel. So when I became an adult and got a career, that was the first thing that I wanted to save my money for, was to travel.
I think that's amazing. And it's so true from a lot of people that I speak to. It's always the same thing. At some point when they were young, so it's actually two extremes. They either really traveled when they were really young and were so impressed and it stayed with them throughout, or they just got to a certain point in their life where it's like, you know what, there has to be something else apart from this. And they just quit and went to travel. So it's interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah.
So your blog is the smarttravelista.com.
Yes, correct.
Now, tell us a little bit about the blog, not particularly like how we'll get to the point of how that came about, because I really wanted to go back to how you got into blogging. I mean, you were a banker, right?
Yeah.
And then you were a travel agent. How did that all happen? Before you tell us about the blog, tell us how it came about, where you went from such an extreme to the other side.
Obviously done a lot of travel, and I travel by myself and meet a lot of travelers. And you get into conversations with them and they'd be asking me a lot of questions, and I'm thinking, I'm getting these same sort of questions all the time. And obviously because I worked in the travel industry, I worked for an airline previously, a lot of my family would utilise my skills, about booking cheap trips and all that. But then when I started travelling, people were asking me, they're saying, how did you do that so cheaply? Oh, I've never been there. How did you do that? And I just found that I was getting into a lot of conversations, and they were coming up really regularly. And I thought, one lady I spoke to when I was in the Middle East said to me, do you have a blog or a website? She goes, because I'd sign up for it. Absolutely. I thought, you know what? I haven't done that. I was actually in the process of writing the first book, and I thought, I haven't got a blog and I haven't got a website. Maybe I need to be doing that too. But it was just multiple conversations that I'd had with different travellers. I suppose you realise that you've got that expertise, but unless someone else sort of highlights it to you, you think, oh, maybe I've got something to offer here where I can share these tips with people.
Exactly. You were in the travel industry first. So how did banking come in? Was that a side gig of some sort, or was it, segue from one business to another?
So I was originally from Sydney. So I was born in Sydney, and I moved to Melbourne. So the airline that I worked for, their head office was in Sydney, and coming down to Melbourne, they didn't have as many jobs. So I thought, you know what, let's just challenge myself and go into a different industry. When you work at a company, you obviously you gain a lot of transferable skills. So it's really a challenge. And the skills that I had that were applicable in that finance industry as well. And then it was interesting because I had the travel and the money, and then that's sort of how
Yeah.
my company became to be, because it was two lots of expertise joined.
See, and it happened by accident. If you hadn't had that happen where they didn't have that many jobs, you wouldn't have considered it. But like you said, the skills are really transferable, aren't they? Because ultimately you're taking care of people, servicing their needs, giving them what they need and what they want
Mm.
and what they need to hear. So that's amazing that you were able to like harness that and become, the smart travelista, which
Yes.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I, no, go ahead.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing I got to ask you, when you started this, how many years ago was the Smart Travelista born?
Only really recently, probably in the last 2 or 3 years, I would say. So probably just a little bit before the pandemic. And
Okay.
yeah,
Great time to get in there.
I know. But on the flip side, what came out of that was the normal travel that I would have done then got that energy got transferred into writing. So,
Yes.
there were still opportunities, even, depending, no matter what happens in the world, there's always going to be opportunities around if you recognize them and then take them up. So yeah, it's probably only been about 3 years, but it feels like I've been doing it forever.
Yeah, because it's something that and you're an expertise, so you're an expert, so you know what to look for and what to write
Mhm.
about, which is fantastic. Now I
Yeah.
see that you've been to like over 30 countries. And I was expecting, I guess, the list to be full of, really cheap places like Vietnam. And, you've been to some of those places. But I also see that you've been to a lot of countries that a lot of people, really, most people probably wouldn't consider because they're so expensive. We're talking Switzerland, Sweden, Monaco, places like that. Now, how do you still travel to those places and still do it at a budget?
You just got to be really clever how you do it. So, obviously, having the expertise, I've got a few tips on when you can travel. So,
Okay.
these places are expensive, but you can travel in certain
Yeah.
times of the year where it is a little bit cheaper. If you're traveling in a popular
Hmm.
time or a high peak season, you are paying a lot more money. But that really goes for any country, whether
Hmm.
that's an expensive country or it's um, a cheaper country. You've got to just plan
Exactly.
it, and go the times
Hmm.
that potentially are a little bit less busier.
Makes sense. Now, when you plan the vacations or when you plan your travel, do you have a budget and then pick a place, or do you pick a place and then make it fit your budget? Does that
So
make sense?
yeah, for sure, yeah. I pick the place first, and then I make sure that the budget fits. But
Well,
also I do. There's certain places for me as an Australian that are really cheap. So, for instance, Asia is very cheap because it's very close to Australia. So
I'm
there,
sorry, Asia? Okay, I didn't hear what you said Asia, right?
yeah, Asia, yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So if you're going to a place that's close to Australia, it's going to be cheaper. So a lot of these other countries obviously are in Europe, and that's quite a distance from Australia. But you've
Yeah.
just got to do your research and do planning. Yeah, I think for me, it's always the idea of the place that I want to go to. So
Yeah.
it might be a childhood dream to go to a certain place. You've got the really
Mhm.
strong urge to go to that place, and you can make it
Yes.
cheap. You've just got to do that research. So I think I do all my travel online, and I do it myself because obviously I know how to do that. If I go to a travel agent, that's going to cost me more to do it that way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
um, I know what to look for, um, and I think it's really well spent time to do some research before you
Yes.
travel,
Yes.
because that comes out in cost savings.
Yes. Definitely. Now, when you also go, do you tend to be more of like a slow traveler, or do you hit it in, a day and move on to the next place? What kind of travel do you do?
I think I'm a more slow traveller. For me, when you travel, it's about the relaxation and
Hmm.
the recharge, from your day to day life. So day to day life can get real busy and frantic. When you've got that annual leave and you're going somewhere and traveling, it's about how you recharge, um,
Yeah.
when you get back home and back into reality, right? Um,
Yes.
but what I try and do, I will have days that will be purely, I have nothing planned. So I just
Hmm.
go where the moment takes me. And then
Yeah.
what I might also do is have some day trips planned. So I've got that little
Okay.
bit of structure in the trip, but then I've also got
Hmm.
those days where if I feel like going for a walk around the city and just see what
Yeah.
crops up, then I do that as well. So I think what I do a really regimented plan before I leave, so everything's
Yeah.
taken care of. But when I get there, the days and the journey and the exploring, that can be spontaneous.
Nice. I think that's a nice combination because for a lot of people, at least I know for me, when I do my planning, I try to mix a little bit of everything. But like you, I do have days where I plan nothing. Some trips I just say, we're gonna go to Paris and I have absolutely no plan. We're just gonna go
Mhm.
there and just see what 2 or 3 weeks brings us or whatever it is. And I think that's a great way to do it because when you plan so much and you have everything, like I have a friend who will write, from 9 to 10:30 I'm going to be here, and from 10:35, I mean, she really does that. And I think maybe that takes a little bit of fun out of the relaxation part of your vacation.
For sure. Yep, I agree. Totally.
So now, when you also travel and as part of your budget, do you ever do a mix of like Airbnb or, by owners only and hotels, or do you stick with mainly one type of travel place,
But
lodging?
yeah, it depends on where I'm staying. So don't really do Airbnbs. I sort of, if you're in certain places in Europe, say for instance Italy, you can go in pensions or hotels. It just depends on the place that I'm going at. I'm probably a bit of a luxury girl. I like having a hotel where someone's making the bed for me, cleaning up,
Yep.
providing my
There's
breakfast,
not there's
providing the
nothing wrong
breakfast,
with that.
providing the breakfast, so I don't have to wash up the dishes. So when we're
Exactly.
on our holiday, we really want a holiday. We don't have to do the cleaning and all that. Um, and I think for security reasons too, depending on where you are, a hotel's always going to provide that little bit of extra security, especially if you're on
Yes.
your own as a woman. If I'm
Yes.
traveling with other people, you've got a little bit more security around you because you've got some other people with you. So
Yeah.
it really depends on the country. If you're in the Middle East or somewhere like that, I would always go a hotel, just
Yes.
for the security and all that sort of stuff. But it really depends. Like, for instance, in Italy, I speak Italian, so
Hmm.
I
Fantastic.
I can converse with them when I'm over there. So I could stay in a pension, because you're having
Yeah.
those conversations with the people and they're sort of more personal. But if you're in a
Yes.
country where you don't speak the language,
Yeah.
and you want some, yeah, and normally with the hotels, they've got more English speaking staff there. So yeah, it just
True.
depends on where you're going to. I think you just wherever you're picking to go, then you sort of investigate the lay of the land. I would say.
Yes. You brought up a really good point about safety. And I think a lot of people, when they're planning their travels, especially when they're solo travelers, it's one thing that they may kind of skimp on. They want to save money, they want to be in a budget. So they will go for a hostel or something or an Airbnb where it's just them. And like you said, when you're in a country where you're not really familiar with, you should really think about the safety factors. I'm glad you mentioned that because really,
Mm.
a lot of people don't think that far ahead. They're so focused on saving money that they sometimes miss the other part of it.
Yep, absolutely. And I always think, what's your life worth? What sort of
Yeah.
money is your life worth? And if you're taking extra risks, you might be okay, but you might not be okay. And then you've got to
Yeah.
consider, well, okay, I saved this money, but now I'm in really deep trouble. And how do I get
Yeah,
out?
exactly. Or you now need to spend a lot of money to get out of that trouble, right?
That's right. So in the end, you're not really saving money, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like sometimes your mic cuts out, so sometimes I talk over you, but it's because I didn't hear what you said. So it's sort of
Oh,
like, yeah. But I think the people can understand that we're talking, from different ends of the world. So there's bound to be a little problem. We're advanced in everything, but everything can be perfect, right?
yeah, that's right.
So, Linda, tell me, what what has been the longest trip that you've taken? How long did you spend in that place?
Probably the longest I've done would have been a trip through Italy.
Ah,
That was probably almost close to about 2 months. Um, always had jobs to go back to, like so you're sort of bound by your employer. But 2 months
uh-huh.
around Italy, and yeah, so once I went around there, I obviously love Italy, and then it's drawn me back quite a number of times. But I think the longer you're in a place, it's really good because you immerse yourself in that culture and you
Yes.
talk more with people.
Yes.
And it's funny, I was talking to someone else on another podcast. I think when people are coming up to you in the street and asking for directions, you know that you're immersed yourself in
Yeah.
that culture. And I was even thinking in that language, which is crazy. Like you start
That's
thinking,
amazing.
yeah. So, but I think you can't do that unless you're really lucky. You can't do that on like a week trip somewhere.
No,
You
you
need,
cannot.
you don't
I,
get the, yeah, you don't sort of see the place through proper eyes unless you've been there for quite a bit of time.
that, yes. Yes, that's very true. I know that, I've been in Spain now a few years and I'm still trying to learn the language properly.
Yeah.
And I can get along, okay if you speak slowly. But
Mm.
now I've noticed the past few months, I've started to think in Spanish first before. Now I'm like, I'm forgetting how to spell things in English because I spell them, I'm trying to play like a word with friends, like in Spanish. And I'm like, why the hell isn't this, correct? It is correct. And then I'm like, that's Spanish. So it's
Yeah,
good. And I think that is,
that's good. That's good.
yeah. So, but you spoke Italian, you felt right at home, and it must have been a great trip because you could actually converse. It wasn't just enough to just hang out and see everything, but you could actually talk and feel like a local, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think it's more meaningful. Not to say that the other trips aren't good either, but it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, and you would know that too, Cam, being in Spain.
Yeah.
What you might have thought one thing of Spain until you actually lived there, and
Yes.
spend time there. Sometimes your perspective is a little bit different.
Yes. Definitely. Now, is there any travel mishap that you can share with us? Like one that just went completely wrong, whether budget wise or or anything. Anything
Yeah.
pop in mind?
Oh, I have so many.
That's part of travel, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Um, I think the one that's very vivid in my mind, I was in Miami and was in the middle of a hurricane, which
Oh.
I did not plan. Um, and yeah, and basically had to evacuate I was in a hotel on South Beach, and
Oh
basically
my
they said,
God.
you need to evacuate.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and I went to Walmart because everyone was getting supplies, and I thought, oh, I better go down there and get some water and stuff myself. But I frightened myself because everyone was a bit frantic down in the Walmart. They were getting wood and they were
Of
getting
course.
wood to go over the windows, and they were getting batteries, and they were getting flashlights, and they were getting all sorts of stuff, matches,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Um, so I thought, oh, this is really real. And then I spent we evacuated. I evacuated into an inland hotel. But spent the rest of the time watching CNN because I just obviously they're the leader in world news. Um,
Yeah.
that you would watch, and yeah, just spent the rest of the time probably a little bit worried. Hadn't been
Yes.
through a hurricane before, but got out of that because I'm talking to you now. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, look, you learn. I think with anything that goes wrong in any travel, I think you
Yeah.
learn resilience and you learn
Yeah.
self-reliance.
Yes.
And you don't know what you're capable of or what strengths you've got until you go through things like that.
Yes.
So even
Most
in
definitely. You gotta start thinking on your feet.
absolutely, because you're on your own, right? I was on my own,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what do I do? Everyone's probably going to the airport. I probably not going to get a flight, so my best option. I had two options they gave me. They said you can go into another hotel, or you can go into a school with the rest of the
Yeah.
population. And I thought, well, I can't stay at the school because I'd been out shopping and I had so much luggage that I wouldn't have felt safe there because and obviously you can't sleep when you're lying there with all
Yeah.
your um,
Of course.
but so I thought probably the best option was to go into the hotel. But yeah, it was frightening at the time. But
Yeah.
I'm alive to
Most,
tell the story. But yeah, I've got so many of those
yes.
stories. Um, but you learn very
Yes,
quickly.
you do. Yes, you do. Now, is there one place that particularly stands out in your mind also that you would say is the most budget friendly? What was the cheapest place that you visited of all these countries?
Oh, I'd reckon Thailand. Thailand
Yeah.
is really cheap. I'd even say Vietnam. Vietnam is very cheap as well. Actually, it'd be a tie between Thailand and Vietnam. Vietnam's really cheap. Was there in 2019 before the pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, you could get taxis so cheap. Like normally, I don't know about you, but the taxis and cabs are very expensive normally. But it was only
Yes.
like $2 Australian to go quite a long distance in a taxi.
This,
So I was getting in the taxis all the time to go down,
of
to the
course.
middle of Ho Chi Minh City, and I was quite shocked. I was like, "Oh, okay, didn't realise that." But everything's cheap there. The food, the shopping's great. Yeah, but Thailand's also wonderful as well. So I'd say for me, due to the proximity of where I am in the world, really,
Yeah.
really cheap holiday.
I haven't been to Vietnam, but I've been to Thailand and I thought, yeah, it's cheap. But I keep hearing, I just interviewed somebody a few days ago and he
Mhm.
lives in Vietnam and he's like, he lives on $650 US dollars a month. And he's got
Mhm.
a proper apartment and everything. I'm like, that's really cheap. I know Thailand is cheap, but I don't think it's that cheap to get a place of your own and be on your own and be totally, done, no matter what everybody says about the cheap live in and everything. It sounds to me like Vietnam is even cheaper than Thailand. Amazing.
Yes. Yeah, we have a lot of
Wow.
people that do like they retire in Asia. I don't know
That,
whether they do that in
yeah.
the US,
Oh,
but
they do.
yeah, yeah. So we have a lot of Australians that will go, all right, I want to retire in, Vietnam or Thailand, wherever they choose. And yes, the money goes a long way,
Yes.
a lot further than it would in Australia as a
Yeah.
retiree.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons we're in Spain is also because, it's cheaper than the US. So I can understand why people would do what's best for them and get the
Yeah,
heck out of Dodge when needed.
yes,
Now,
for sure.
Linda, curious, when the quarantine, when it all went down, how was that in Australia? As somebody who was on the ground of a country that was, closed up and, didn't have any travelers coming in, going out, how did that feel? Like, walk us through what happened.
Oh, it was crazy. We basically had our borders closed for 2 years. They only just opened up, I think, Monday this week. So we weren't there was no tourists coming into Australia at all inbound. When for us, I was in Melbourne. We had a really really strict lockdown. We had a number of
Mm-hmm.
lockdowns. Um, I work from home with my full time job, but we basically worked permanently from home for 2 years.
Yeah.
And we had curfews. It was crazy.
Wow. Uh-huh.
I've never experienced curfews in Australia, but because of the cases and obviously the government policy, we weren't allowed to go out after I think it was 10 p.m. up until about 6 a.m. And obviously the masks. And if you
Yeah.
weren't, if you were more than 5 kilometres away from your home, and you couldn't tell the police
Mm-hmm.
while you were out, you would get arrested, or they
Mm-hmm.
would fine you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, it just felt like one big lockdown. Like there was a number of lockdowns. So what would
And
happen
it,
is you get a lockdown,
yeah.
and then they'd ease it for a week or two,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'd lock
The
us down
numbers.
again.
Yeah.
And I think the most recent would have been Christmas time. So I think the government felt really bad because for
Yeah.
the number of Christmases we'd not been able to see our families. So this time, just Christmas past, they opened it up. But what happened was
Yeah.
once they opened it up, then
Yeah.
everyone got Omicron, and then they had to lock us
Of
down
course.
again. Yeah. So
It was a
um,
constant up and down, like a roller coaster ride.
yeah, and I suppose that was the same everywhere. I
Yeah.
obviously saw the TV with Italy and other European countries, but look, I trust the doctors and the people, the health professionals. They knew what they were talking
Good.
about. It was
Exactly.
unprecedented. We'd never gone through anything like this before, so I had trust in them.
That's what I kept telling people. You've got to trust that because it's not like anybody's ever gone through this before. So, they were
Mm,
playing it by ear. I mean, you can't blame them for getting it wrong sometimes or getting it right or whatever, but I'd rather believe them than all the Facebook warriors and all the
yeah,
homemade doctors.
that's right. I think it was frustrating for me as a traveller because I couldn't travel. But
Yeah.
obviously, my health's more important than any travel, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I think towards the end, everyone was getting fatigued with all the lockdowns,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was. But I think one really good thing out of it, I saved so much money. Oh, the money I saved, which means I can travel more now, right?
Exactly, right? It's like there's a silver lining there somewhere, right?
That's right. And from a writing perspective, I was very productive. So I
Yes.
try and see the silver lining and the positives that came out of what happened to us. So
Yeah. Now, you said the quarantine, now I bring it back full circle now to the smarttravelista.com, which everybody should check out, by the way. So now tell me, please, about the blog. Tell me about the
well,
blog.
yeah. So with the blog, when I started it, we were still probably in quarantine. So I was sort of reflecting on a lot of the places that I'd been, and
Hmm.
sort of giving tips to people, places that they should visit. So, as a travel agent, I used to do that. It was like, oh, you want to go to the US? These are the places you should do. So, my blog's a
Hmm.
sort of cross section of the five. It might be the five best places to see in a certain destination, or it might be the best 5 tips to see something. I've also got a bit of the travel money saving in there as well. But
Hmm.
I'll get an idea talking to somebody, and I say, I haven't been to Italy. And it was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, I'm going to blog about that because, I know
Yeah.
that place well. So it was really
Yeah.
a bit of a reflection, I suppose through my photos and also some of the places that I'd been to. So I was sort of reliving those trips through the blog.
Yeah.
But get I get great feedback from people. Like, got so many testimonials, and I get so much feedback every week where people are really happy with what I'm writing. So I think from the feedbacks that I get from people, I think, okay, well, that really resonated with people. I might go and do some more of that. Um, I've also got a bit of a travel opinion on there. So I've got a lot of opinions, as most people do, right?
Yeah.
So I put a bit of my travel opinion in there as well. So with my blog, it's sort of, I'm doing a little bit of everything, and sort of testing
Yes.
myself as a writer as well. So, I've written the books, but
Yes.
writing
Please
books,
tell me about the books.
yeah, so books are very different to blogs. Blogs more, sort of one off. But with the books, I've got the 4 books in the Smart Travelista guide. So the first one's finding the best travel bargains and managing your budget. So that's really about how to save a lot of money doing online travel, and just some of the, there's some tips to make your trip cheaper. The book two is the best overseas bargain shopping. So, I'm a big shopper. I love shopping when I
Mm-hmm.
travel. So
Mm-hmm.
it's some of the tips on how to get the best bargains, but then there's also some destinations that are my favourite places to do that bargain shopping.
Okay.
Book three is how to increase your airline loyalty points and fly for free. So that's how to build your airline miles or points
Mm-hmm.
and use that to redeem and then save costs on the flights that you get or maybe the hotels. And
Yeah.
book four is how to protect your travel health and safety. So health is really important. As we mentioned before, the safety is, very important also. But the books are
Very.
really very much around topics that will resonate with most travellers. That I use the tips. So the things that I use and I've used that
Mm-hmm.
would save you money. So it's all around the money saving aspect as well.
That's great. And where can this be found on Amazon and on your website?
Yeah, so you can go onto my website. There's direct links onto Amazon, but yeah, go to Amazon and just Google, just do a search for Smart Travelista, and you'll find me there. But yeah, any questions, they can always come to my website, and happy to always answer any questions as well.
Can you give us just the name of that website before we wrap up again, please?
Sorry, what was that?
No, I said, can you tell us the website again, just
Oh
for
yes,
everybody else?
yeah. So the website is thesmarttravelista.com.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Linda. It's been wonderful. And, I think everybody should check out the Linda's website, and you can get so many tips on there already. And then the books, I mean, really, they're quick reads. They're not something that, you can read quickly and you can take with you because they're light.
Yep.
Or you can even get Kindle versions probably. Can you?
Yes, absolutely, can do that
There you
too.
go. So it's something that you can, use forever, because if you're a traveler, you're always looking for ways to save money. I mean, I would hope that everybody likes to save money, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, Linda, I'll leave you with one last question. Is there any advice you have for people like, I guess I would call them maybe hesitant to travel people? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, don't be scared to travel. It's a really good thing to do in life. It's an education, really. It really tells you, it opens up your mind about things. You get a global perspective on things, and also you learn a lot about yourself, I think, as well. But don't be scared. I think if you're safe, take the right precautions, do your planning and do your research, and just be safe like you would normally be in your own home,
Yeah.
in your own home city. Then
Yeah.
you're never gonna go wrong.
Yeah.
One thing I would say
That's
though, always travel with travel insurance, because when things do go wrong, then that's really gonna help you. I would not travel without travel insurance. If you've got the money to travel, you must have travel insurance.
good. Very good. Very, very good advice. So the world is not the big bad as you think. You go out there and discover, but be safe while you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely wonderful, and a great way to leave the show. Everybody listening to the show, please make sure you check out Linda's website, thesmarttravelista.com. You can get her books there, or on Amazon. You will not be disappointed at all. And I will also have this on the website, Next Bite of Life, as usual, on the blog post about this show. So thank you so much for listening. And Linda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kim, for having me. All the best, and let's travel the world.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
See ya.